Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
They turn a blind eye to Ukrainians meddling in our elections. Republicans have cited numerous indications of Ukraine meddling in the 2016 elections. What is the full extent of Ukraine's election meddling against the Trump campaign in 2016?
Some of you on this committee appear to believe that Russia and its security services did not conduct a campaign against our country, and that perhaps, somehow, for some reason, Ukraine did. This is a fictional narrative that has been perpetrated and propagated by the Russian security services themselves.
Republicans have been using the impeachment hearings to peddle Russian conspiracy theories about the 2016 election and shield Donald Trump. So when Fiona Hill testified before the House on Thursday, she clearly knew what was coming and shut it all the way down. This week, Republicans again showed just how far they're willing to go to protect their boss man, Donald Trump, even to the point of joining Trump in taking the word of Russia over our own intelligence community. And joining me now, three guests who saw it all coming. Naveed Jamali, author of How to Catch a Russian Spy. Malcolm Nance, author of The Plot to Betray America. And Sarah Kendzior, author of The View from Flyover Country. Thank you all for being here. I'll just go in the order that I introduced you, Naveed. This is what David Loffman, who's the former head of counterintelligence for the Department of Justice, tweeted. It was either yesterday or today. I saw it today. From this moment forward, any member of Congress or U.S. government official who persists in making this claim, basically that Ukraine attacked the election, is essentially aiding and abetting the enemy. And he said that because this weird conspiracy theory that it was really Ukraine that attacked the election, not Russia, comes directly out of the GRU. Your thoughts?
I think at best they are an unwitting Russian asset. Look, if you amplify talking points by Russia that are meant to cause a wedge between Russia, the Ukraine and United States, as well as minimize Russia's attack on the 2016 election, you are acting as a Russian asset, not an agent, an asset. You are amplifying their disinformation. And he's absolutely right. I mean, we have to call this stuff out.
You know, it's bad enough, Malcolm, for Donald Trump to not believe our intelligence services, who all agree that Russia attacked our election, as you've written in your books, as we all now know. It's pretty common knowledge now that they did it. He doesn't believe it. But now we're finding out that he's not alone. That Devin Nunes, who is, and just to remember, y'all, he's the ranking member on the Intelligence Committee, meaning if Republicans still had the majority in the House, he would be the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. That guy also seems to believe this conspiracy theory and may have tried to participate in trying to smear a fellow American, Joe Biden and his son. What does it mean to you that a ranking member, the ranking member of the Intelligence Committee, also believes this conspiracy theory that comes from the Kremlin?
I believe that he knows it's a conspiracy theory that comes from the Kremlin. I think he's comfortable with working with information that comes with the Kremlin because he believes, like all of the other Republicans believe, that what comes out of Donald Trump's mouth, that they must follow, almost in lockstep like the dictator that he's trying to be. They do not care about the Constitution of the United States. And I will say that flatly because their sworn oath to protect and defend this nation. This man, Devin Nunes, has access to the exact same intelligence the president of the United States does. They don't believe it for personal political reasons because they have no problem splitting America up into a 60-40 nation where 40% rule as autocrats over the other 60%. That means the Constitution is a piece of paper that they would rather rip up or cut into segments rather than defend this country at all costs. The Russians set this whole thing up. We all know it started in 2016. We have been warning for 3 years, and now we find Donald Trump believes it in his heart. The words of a communist, ex-communist dictator, KGB officer, rather than any person in America. We're in danger with the way these people are thinking.
And, Sarah, what people don't understand about nations that are corrupt, because Americans have lived in kind of the luxury of believing we have an eternal democracy that's protected because of this piece of paper, the Constitution. But corruption itself is what starts autocracy, right? When you have a state party that is itself allowed to become corrupt, whether financially corrupt or corrupt because they're beholden to the autocrat in question, the whole system starts to be undermined. You now have other members of the United States Congress. Marsha Blackburn, United States Senator, Moscow Marsha started trending on Twitter because she participated in attacking Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, the man wearing the uniform of the United States military as he's testifying and accusing him of being the whistleblower. You now have members of Congress who are participating in attacking fellow Americans for Donald Trump.
Yeah, you're right. We have a lot of corruption and plutocracy that's made in the USA, and that opens us for vulnerabilities for attacks by foreign powers such as Russia, which hijacked our country in 2016 through the election of Donald Trump. And now we are left with, as I've said before, a transnational crime syndicate masked as a government led by a Kremlin asset. And so one of the problems we have is money into politics, is the infiltration of money from foreign backers through proxies like the NRA to Republicans, which means that all of them are contaminated. And so when you are investigating Donald Trump, you end up with an investigation into the Republican Party. You end up with people who are, it varies from careerist to corrupt to complicit. But at this point, I think they're afraid. They are not acting on behalf of the American people. They are not acting in accordance to the American Constitution. They are in a crime cult. And that crime cult worships Donald Trump and revolves around Donald Trump.
At this point, we don't know what Vladimir Putin has said to Donald Trump in these secret phone calls that he's had with him. But is it possible that Donald Trump now takes his beliefs in the world from the president of Russia? And Malcolm, you write in your new book about the fact that the Republican Party has now been subsumed by this. What do we do if the state party, the president's party, is participating in this rather than fighting this kind of endemic corruption?
Well, I mean, what we have to do is we have to call it out. And I'm sorry, we have a party that is now running a primary. And what I don't hear from the top tier candidates, I don't hear from Joe Biden, I don't hear from Elizabeth Warren, I don't hear from Bernie Sanders, that day one as president of the United States, they will defend this nation. They will fight this scheme that's being done by Russia. They will recalibrate the Republicans back to loyalty to the United States, and that they will go through this government and root it out. Whoever's going to win this primary must right now say they will defend the Constitution in this country above internal enemies, domestic enemies, and foreign enemies that have co-opted them. Because if we don't, they will just be subsumed by their bickering that they're doing right now, and we will lose.
And, Sarah, what do we do? You wrote a book called View from Flyover Country not long ago. What do we do now that the base of the party, of the Republican Party, is now also in that same milieu of being more pro-Russia than pro what the traditional values of the United States have been said to be?
It's deeply troubling. The first thing we need to do is be honest that this is even happening. We need to be straightforward. We need to tell the truth. We need more hearings. We need more presentation of evidence. We need less false both-siding for no particular reason other than to, assuage people's insecurities. And we also need accountability from our officials. We need to take a hard look at how we got into this position, because it was not just the Republicans being corrupt or Trump being corrupt. It was institutional failure. Our agencies have let us down. The people who are supposed to protect us let us down. And so what we need to do is examine the roots of those mistakes, learn from them, move forward, and bring accountability to the American public, because that is what the American people deserve.
It is Monday, the 25th of November of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Oh my, what a weekend. We have quite a bit to throw into this melange, this quite lovely dish of everything that we had from the weekend. Yes, mixed together and folded and rolled just right, because this is a gourmet dish for gourmands. All right. Apparently, Trump does not want to leave the official residence because he can't trust his closest aides anymore. And I have made note that he's about 6 Scaramucci's from turning out like Howard Hughes at the end. Maybe 8, but I think 6 Scaramucci's. He's not going to grow the fingernails as long that quickly, of course, but they're on their way. They are. Okay, so there's that, and it really portends of even worse happening to us now. It really does. And apparently his cult is so invested, and when I say cult, yes, exactly what Sarah Kendazor said. The GOP has turned into a crime cult. Wow, you had John Kennedy Pool Confederacy of Dunces guy going out there saying, hey, Fiona Hill has an opinion, and her opinion about it being the Russians and not the Ukrainians, that's just her opinion. You know what? He got the same intel briefing as every other senator and most of the other members of the House, at least on the Intel Committee, and all the Republicans apparently say they don't believe it. Well, they can't because do you really think they're doing this because that they don't fear for their lives? Of course they fear for their lives. Maybe their reputations. But knowing Vlad, there's some convenient ways that he has to deal with people who don't do the job or become critics. So every single member of the GOP apparently, well, the ones who have not been touched by Vlad's corruption are quitting. They're resigning. Not just the Republican Party, they're quitting all of politics. They're getting out. And what is left? All those who are so deep in NRA laundered Russian rubles. Yes, they're not rubles now. They've been turned into dollars. And apparently there's enough for these cultists to sell out America. So to go in front of the American people time and time again, knowing what our intelligence community told them, and they believe Vlad over our intelligence community as if, well, on the other hand, many of these elected representatives come from the great morass of us who have been bombarded by Fox-type propaganda for 30-plus years. 40? Yeah, maybe about 40 now. That's a long time. There's a lot of people who've been born in the midst of this disinformation campaign, and this didn't start with Russia. But it did start with the Gimitarians who had no unwillingness. I know that's a double negative. They are willing to sell out America for $1 and to hold on to whatever they think power is. You know, you got to go back to the original Red Dawn. The GOP is this toady mayor thinking he can play both sides. Oh, yeah, I'm just going to let the Russians do what they want to do, and I'll just try to keep my people safe that way. And they all got lined up, and they all got shot. Except for the mayor. He got to watch it. Yep. Kept him in line now, didn't it? Sure did. And I guess the rest of us are the Wolverines. Let's hope that, I don't know, we can do a little dirty dancing. I know that's obscure. You'll get it in time. We're going to have to do some dirty dancing to be able to win this war. Because no one puts baby in a corner. Okay, enough of mixing movie metaphors. What else is on the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Because we did have quite a bit of a segment there at the top. We just had to. Well, Trump attacked Nancy Pelosi for offering a bill to lower drug prices that he praised just about a month ago. Is he forgetful? No, they say he's transactional. I think that's a nice way of saying he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. The Trump administration says its anti-foreigner policies are not to blame for driving foreign students away. Of course not. We live in a topsy-turvy world. And Trump took credit for saving the lives of thousands of Hong Kong protesters by refusing a commitment to sign bipartisan legislation supporting the pro-democracy movement. You see, if he had signed that, if he had been on the side of democracy, his good friend there, this running China, would kill people, and he kept them from killing them. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where Australia is investigating allegations that China tried to install a spy in their parliament. And Egyptian security forces raided the office of independent news site Mada Masr, detaining 3 reporters and its senior editor. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. The bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page, definitely located by superior graphic design. Thank you, Tom. You will find our chat room link right there by the social media scroll, and Kelly takes care of that. She's a monitor of the chat room link, and she does so much more, indeed. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, equally located by deft graphic design. Thank you, Tom. Is our link to our Patreon page. And all kidding aside, do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. The bills keep going up, and we would be unable to do this without you. Though the bulk of what we pay here comes out of our own wallets, we still would be unable to do it without you. And your generosity has allowed us to resist as the founders originally intended. We've been resisting for over 8 years now in 24/7, 365 resistance radio. Yeah, we've been broadcasting that long, and it's because of you, and we thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. Just go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that, too. Boy, he does a lot, and even more. Thank you, Tom. I take care of @JusticePutnam, and I also post the show notes and links diary, a very integral part to this whole endeavor. So check that out, because I embellish a bit, just a little. And so the show notes and links diary are there, and I post that about 10 minutes before showtime on social media so that you can fact check me, because the embellishments, though they do stay true to the general gist of the story, it's good to know the actual source material, so you know from whence I am being sarcastic, satirical, or just plain off. Indeed. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, go to @CookbookWest and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeart, YouTube, etc., 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 etc. Okay, Well, let's get in with this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City, Hash Mondays. And it comes out of the American Independent by Josh Israel. Trump attacked House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and her Democratic majority on Friday as do-nothing for offering a bill to lower drug prices. But back in September, he praised the bill and a bipartisan Senate proposal, while declaring that he and Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar will soon release a plan to let Florida and other states import prescription drugs that are much cheaper than what we have now. Trump dismissed the efforts of Representatives Pelosi and Frank Pallone to address the problem by allowing Medicare to negotiate prices with pharmaceutical companies on several of the most expensive medications, claiming Pelosi and her do-nothing Democrats' drug pricing bill doesn't do the trick. Fewer cures, fewer treatments. God, this guy's such a dimwit. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be insulting dimwits. I know you're better than he is. Okay, I know it. The House bill was endorsed in committee last month and is awaiting a vote in the full House. Senate Majority Mitch McConnell, old Moscow Mitch there, has vowed to block it from a vote, as he has with more than 400 other House-passed bills this year, because he's the Grim Reaper of democracy. Trump's comments are especially odd, given that back in September he embraced Pelosi's proposal and a bipartisan Senate bill proposed by Chuck Grassley and Ron Wyden, my senator from Oregon. I like Senator Grassley's drug pricing bill very much. Oh, wait a second. This is Trump speaking. I like Senator Grassley's drug pricing bill very much. It is great to see Speaker Pelosi's bill today. That's what he said back then. And then he summed up by saying, let's get it done in a bipartisan way. Now, I'm curious. Did he think that Nancy wasn't going to bring any investigative impeachment hearings further than what had already been going on in September? Is that why he was so nice? Now, Trump is praising House Republicans for showing real leadership and being prepared to enact bipartisan solutions for drug prices. The do-nothing Democrats are playing partisan politics with your drug prices. But it's unclear how passing a prescription drug bill is doing nothing, or what House Republicans have done on the issue aside from inaccurately opposing Pelosi's bill as socialism, because that's the catch-all phrase. You know, you got her emails, it used to be just liberal. You could just say liberal, and the right wing would just go crazy because liberal was their trigger. If they heard it, it was absolutely a pejorative, like, you liberal. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm a liberal. Well, there's nothing wrong with it. And they would say, oh, yes, it is. As if you had the mark of Satan on you, because that's what they were told to believe, and they believed it. And I kind of think maybe they wanted to. Lots of them did. Now, let's see. The issue is not featured on the House Republicans' website, and the GOP leader, Moscow Mitch McConnell, the Grim Reaper of democracy, has not proposed an alternative. Trump's criticism of the Pelosi approach closely echoes the opposition from the pharmaceutical industry, because lower prices would mean smaller profits, and the pharmaceutical companies claim this will mean the companies will spend less on researching and developing new treatments and cures. No, it won't. It means that you won't be given the big-time bonuses to your top guy CEO. Instead of putting it right there into research, these greedy gimmitarians. Back as a candidate, Trump actually backed allowing Medicare to negotiate prices with pharmaceutical companies. That's because he's a pandering mobster. Tell the people what they want to know, and then put a horse's head at the end of their bed to make them an offer you can't refuse. offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays, comes out of the Associated Press. And, of course, only anonymous worker bees work at the Associated Press. The number of foreign students coming to U.S. colleges and universities continued to fall last year, according to a new report, but the Trump administration says the drop should be blamed on high tuition costs and not students' concerns over the nation's political atmosphere. Well, I'm sorry. Foreign student tuition has always been high. That's why the universities loved it. Wouldn't you? An annual report from the Institute of International Education found that the number of newly enrolled international students dipped by 1% in the fall of 2018 compared to the year before. It follows decreases of 7% and 3% in the previous 2 years, which were the first downturns in more than a decade. Now, the downturn is worrisome for universities that have come to rely on tuition from foreign students who are typically charged higher prices. And they were willing to pay those higher prices because, God darn it, we're the United States of America. Everybody wanted to come here, not just to be, within the throes of representative democracy, but actually to learn what the hell was going on because we have the best universities. Well, we used to. We still do. But I guess they're trying to get them starved to the size where they can drown them in a bathtub or maybe a test tube. Maybe they're going to drown them in a test tube. Some schools have blamed Trump's rhetoric against immigrants for driving students away, but officials at the State Department, which pays for the annual report, dismissed the idea. Of course they would. Have you ever met a racist who admits they're a racist? Of course not. They'll tell you that you're the racist, though, for asking. Carolyn Casagrande, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Academic Programs of the Department's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, insisted students are deterred by the high cost to attend U.S. schools. She claimed the downturn was tied to students who were applying to college during the Obama administration because you always got to blame the black guy. And when you've been installed into these programs having absolutely no experience whatsoever in them, maybe you were a caterer. Maybe you worked as just the bartending manager for a caterer. And tell you to deconstruct the administrative state because we are all victims of it. You're doing God's work. And you know who God is? Ask Rick Perry. Final offering here in the Bistro Cafe is also brought to us by anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press. Donald Trump took credit for saving the lives of thousands of protesters in Hong Kong, saying that the only thing stopping Chinese President Xi Jinping from cracking down on demonstrators was his warning that doing so would kill trade negotiations between the two countries. Wow. He's so powerful. He's like a Superman. In the same breath, Trump said he wouldn't commit to signing bipartisan legislation supporting pro-democracy activists because democracy has, democratic in it. And he's at war with the Democrats, with the emphasis on rats, so democracy is Democrat. And he would be right, too. Trump's comments come after the House and Senate this week passed the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act in reaction to anti-government protests that have convulsed the semi-autonomous Chinese city for more than 5 months. The bill authorizes sanctions on Chinese and Hong Kong officials involved in human rights abuses and would mandate the State Department to annually review special autonomous status that the U.S. grants Hong Kong on trade. Well, look, if this guy is going to fire his Secretary of the Navy because he wants a murderous war criminal, a ghoul, to keep his seal trident pin, do you really think that he's going to want to sanction China when he can get some more money in his pocket and Ivanka can get a few patents? Well, more than what she already has on top of the, 5,000 already? That's something we'll have to look into after we get done with Hunter Biden. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world, and we are going to finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, The Terminator returns to form. In a season of reboots, it isn't quite accurate to classify Tim Miller's Terminator Dark Fate as one. Yet it isn't exactly a direct sequel either. This movie picks up where Terminator 2 ended. John and Sarah Connor have successfully warded off the threat of Skynet, but they haven't quite changed the future. Instead, another project has led to a rise of machines as well, and there's a full-scale war between them and humans in the future because, as Sarah wryly observes, humans seldom learn from their mistakes. The Terminator robots are still very real, and this time one has been sent back to kill a young Mexican woman, Danny Ramos, played by Natalia Reyes, who Sarah cynically points out is the new Sarah Connor. Sent back in time to protect her is Grace, a human-born soldier whose enhancements have made her into a cyborg. Grace has superhuman strength and abilities, but they come at a cost. Although Schwarzenegger is back as the T-800 with a surprising new identity and a human named Carl, Terminator Dark Fate is mainly concerned with the women. Combining sharp editing and some smart humor, it manages to be surprisingly relatable amidst the violence. As we see, time has not been terribly kind to Sarah. Without spoilers, she may have saved humankind from its fate, but it has taken a toll on her. We aren't surprised when she reveals to Grace that most of her time not battling Terminators is spent getting drunk to forget. While Linda Hamilton is as good as ever as Sarah Connor, it's Mackenzie Davis as Grace who is the real standout. Davis, best known for her TV work, is nothing short of amazing. Terminator Dark Fate, much like last year's Halloween, is an offering that gets its franchise back on track. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60 Second Science. I'm Suzanne Bard. Would you drink water that had once been flushed down a toilet? After it's been cleaned, that is. The climate is warming, and the population of drought-prone states like California continues to grow. So recycling wastewater into drinking water may become a necessity, but
people are grossed out by recycled water because it was once wastewater. You know, the stuff that goes down your kitchen drains, your showers, your toilets. And even though it's cleaned up to a standard that is identical, if not better, than commercially bottled water, the key barrier to recycled water acceptance is people's disgust regarding it.
University of California Riverside psychologist Daniel Harmon. In a recent set of experiments, Harmon and his colleague Mary Govain learned just how difficult it can be for people to get over their disgust at the thought of drinking recycled water.
Our study was aimed at investigating whether the media messages that we see, commercials or brief internet videos, these pro-environmental messages, whether they actually work, whether they can get people to accept recycled water and consume recycled water.
In one experiment, the researchers had some participants watch a short video promoting water conservation. And in another experiment, they added a video explaining why recycled water might trigger disgust, even though all contaminants have been removed. And neither video had a strong effect on people's willingness to drink recycled water or to sign a petition supporting the practice.
The messages did sort of make people more positively predisposed to recycled water, but it was not enough to get them to actually use recycled water more. It didn't actually translate to behaviors.
In fact, viewing the video that directly addressed recycled water's ick factor was no more persuasive than the water conservation video alone. Perhaps because dispassionate reason and logic only go so far.
Disgust is such a powerful core reaction. It's such a powerful emotion that simply giving more information is not going to really be effective because disgust is not really a rational response.
The study appears in the journal Basic and Applied Social Psychology. Harmon says it's probably going to take a lot more than just brief internet messaging to get people to embrace recycled water. For example, it might help to see members of their community drinking water that's gone, as it's called, from toilet to tap, with no ill effects.
We think that these kind of more direct campaigns for acceptance are necessary to get people to get over that hump, to take that first sip, so to speak.
Cheers! Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Suzanne Bard.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? What, did he balance on that big chair?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Gaines. As fall turns to winter, the flu season will be upon us in force. The best way to avoid influenza is to get immunized. Dr. Joe Brazee is a researcher with CDC's National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases. He's joining us today to discuss the importance of getting the flu vaccine. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe, let's start with how long does the flu season last?
In general, flu seasons will last for several months in the United States at the national level. Each year it begins in the fall, usually peaks between January and March, and ends in the spring. But the timing of flu season is unpredictable, especially at the local level. So because we can't tell for sure when it will start, when it will peak, and when it will end in every community, we want to make sure that people get vaccinated as early as possible when the flu vaccines become available in the late summer and early fall.
Well, who should get vaccinated?
Everyone 6 months of age and older should get vaccinated against the flu each and every year. This is especially important for people at high risk of complications or severe flu if they get infected.
Which groups are at higher risk for complications from the flu?
Well, some people are at especially higher risk for severe flu or complications. These are people who are very young, like kids under 5 years of age, anybody 65 years and older, and people with underlying health disorders like heart disease, lung disease, kidney disease, or diseases of the immune system, and pregnant women.
Joe, how effective is the vaccine for preventing flu?
Well, vaccine is the single best way to protect you and your family from the flu each year. Most years, the vaccine reduces a person's chance of getting the flu and complications from the flu by about 50 to 70%. But how well it works can vary from season to season and by person. So remember that vaccine is one of 3 ways you can protect yourself against the flu. The other ones are good hygiene, like hand washing, covering your cough, staying home when you're sick, and finally medications. There are medications that your doctor can prescribe to treat the flu if you get it.
Are there any side effects from getting vaccinated?
Well, there are 2 types of flu vaccines. First, the shots. The most common side effects with the flu shots are soreness or redness in your arm for a day or 2 after getting the vaccine. The nasal spray vaccines can cause runny nose or congestion or low-grade fever in some people for, again, about a day or 2 after getting the vaccine. So these side effects are mild compared with the disease itself, which causes hundreds of thousands of hospitalizations and tens of thousands of deaths each year in the United States. Remember that the vaccine is the safest and most effective way to prevent flu each and every year.
Joe, where can listeners get more information about the flu vaccine?
We'll go to cdc.gov/flu.
Thanks, Joe. I've been talking today with CDC's Dr. Joe Brazee about the annual flu vaccine. Remember, everyone 6 months and older should be vaccinated. To get your annual flu vaccine, see your healthcare provider or go to a pharmacy, grocery store, or clinic in your area. If you get influenza, talk with your healthcare provider right away about antiviral medication. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Robert Gaines for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
$234,000 voters in Wisconsin are at risk of being thrown off the voting rolls. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. As reported by the Associated Press, quote, more than 234,000 Wisconsin voters would be unable to cast their ballots in next year's election or the primaries unless they register again before those elections. The reason? Voters who may or may not have moved receive a postcard from the state asking them to confirm their address. A lawsuit filed by a conservative law firm, the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, insists that voters who do not respond to the postcard within 30 days must be thrown off the voting rolls. The Wisconsin Elections Commission, in contrast, says no. They have 2 years to respond to that postcard. Voter eligibility, for the most part, is a matter decided under state law, and this lawsuit is in state court. The people who would be most affected by the 30-day mandate are, of course, those who move, young people and poor people who have to move more often. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers, in response to the lawsuit, said, quote, we should spend our time in making it easier for people to vote rather than making it more difficult. I'm hopeful that the lawsuit is thrown out. Oh, yes, the 234,000 voters, well, that's a consequential number in Wisconsin, a state that President Donald Trump won in 2016 by 23,000 votes. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day that teachers in St. Paul, Minnesota went on strike. It was the first ever organized walkout of teachers in the United States. The strike was organized by the St. Paul Federation of Teachers, Local 28. The strike lasted a month and involved nearly 1,200 teachers. Working conditions at the St. Paul schools were intolerable. Many buildings were poorly maintained. One school had just one bathroom and sink for 180 students. Some schools were heated with just one coal stove. The teachers were some of the worst paid urban educators in the nation. The schools did not pay for textbooks, so teachers often paid for books for poor students out of their own pockets. The teachers in Local 28 did not want to walk out, but decided a strike was the only way to change these deplorable conditions. On the first day of the strike, the temperature was only 3 degrees above zero. But despite the frigid weather, the teachers picketed at all 77 public schools in St. Paul. Their slogan was "Strike for Better Schools." Many across the nation were shocked that the teachers went out on strike. The strike was even covered by Life magazine, which ran a story of teachers cooking a Thanksgiving turkey on the picket line. The teachers enjoyed grassroots local support, as only 25 teachers crossed the picket lines. A ministers' association wrote to city officials writing, "We believe that a way must be found that will deal fairly with the members of a profession to whom we entrust the training of our children who are the future citizens of our democracy." The teachers won a number of victories, including salary increases and the distribution of free textbooks for students. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labor.
This is a Radio Labor report recorded on Monday, November 25th, 2019. I'm Mark Boulanger. November 25th is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. It is the first since the International Labor Organization adopted a proposed law prohibiting violence and harassment at work with a special focus on women. The ILO is the agency of the United Nations specialized on matters of work in the world. Its major activity is the setting of international labor standards on topics such as hours of work and maternity leave. It is operated as a tripartite organization by representatives of governments, employer groups, and labor unions. Last June, the ILO passed what is called a convention, essentially an international law, about violence and harassment at work, Convention 190. To find out more about Convention 190, I talked to Chidi King, the director of the Equality Department of the International Trade Union Confederation. The ITUC represents national labor centers, such as the Ghana Trades Union Congress at the world level. I asked Ms. King to describe ILO Convention 190.
Convention 190 is the Violence and Harassment Convention. That's its short title. And it's the first time that we've had an international law that looks at preventing, addressing, and redressing violence and harassment in the world of work, including gender-based violence, which is particularly important. The convention actually recognizes that gender-based violence is a particular form of violence and harassment that requires particular attention and measures in order to be able to deal with it and eradicate it from the world of work. It was adopted by the Conference of the International Labour Organization by a majority of votes from trade union movement, of course, by governments as well, and employers. And this is something that the trade union movement has been campaigning for quite some time, given that there was no international law that set this minimum baseline attributing responsibilities to governments, to employers, and to workers and their organizations, so all actors in the world of work, to prevent, address, and redress violence and harassment, particularly gender-based violence and harassment. And I should also say that the convention for the first time outlines the right of everyone to a world of work free of violence and harassment. So this is the first time that this has been clearly delineated in international law as regards the world of work specifically.
What is the next step in the process of implementing the ILO's Convention on Violence and Harassment, Convention 190?
The next step for us now is to ensure that there is wide take-up, so ratification of these instruments in order to promote the cultural change we want to see both in our workplaces and wider society at large. Ratification means that governments agree to adopt the law at national level, so take the necessary measures to bring the convention into law at national level and to give effect to it, so to implement it effectively. From the ILO perspective, a minimum of 2 countries will need to ratify the convention before it can come into force, and then it will only come into force a year after the second country has ratified. The coming into force of the convention, of course, is particularly important because that's when it really does start to have normative effect. Wide ratification is also important in the sense that we do want to create this level playing field through these minimum standards that set out the action that is necessary for every government, every member state that belongs to the International Labour Organization to take in order to end violence and harassment in the world of work.
What can unions and their members do to help implement ILO Convention 190?
Well, I think, first of all, raising public awareness. And when I say public awareness, I mean awareness amongst our own membership, as members of the public as well, but the public beyond the trade union movement.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 38 degrees Fahrenheit. We had some showers last night. We're going to have a few showers developing this afternoon. Winds are out of the west-northwest in gusts at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Steady winds at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Gusts will be a little bit more than that. Mostly cloudy overnight with a low around freezing. Winds will be light and variable. And then we're going to have a mix of snow and rain tomorrow as the winds shift out of the east-southeast at 10 to 20 miles per hour. And we will be under a wind advisory. We are currently under a winter weather watch. That mix of rain should have about 1 to 3 inches of snow. So I guess I'm going to get snow chains today. Yes, I'd better. All right, let's see. What else do we have here? Pollen is rated at none. The air quality index is at 29 parts per million. And the daytime UV index has gone down to 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.27 inches. Visibility is down to 5 miles. And relative humidity is at 91%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. London is 54 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 52 and cloudy. Rome is, a nice, balmy 63 degrees and fair. Kyiv is 28 and cloudy. Kabul is 40 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 70 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 56 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and fair. They're 70 degrees and clear is Sydney, Australia. Indeed. San Francisco, California is 47 degrees and sunny. And New York is 48 degrees Fahrenheit. And they say that's fair. Well, it must be if it's the Big Apple. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Finally, Paul of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. Australia's domestic spy agency is investigating whether China tried to install an agent in federal parliament in what Prime Minister Scott Morrison called deeply disturbing allegations. The Australian Security Intelligence Organisation said it had launched an investigation before the alleged plot was reported by Australia's 60 Minutes program and affiliated newspapers yesterday, Sunday. The report said a suspected Chinese espionage ring had offered a 7-figure sum to pay for a Melbourne luxury car dealer, Bo Nick Zhao, to run for a seat in Australia's federal parliament. Oh, a used car salesman as maybe a Chinese asset? Huh. What do they think this is, America? The reporting on 9's 60 Minutes contains allegations that ASIO, which is the Australian Security Intelligence Agency, ASIO, and they take that seriously in a statement on yesterday, Sunday. Australians can be reassured that ASIO was previously aware of matters that have been reported today and has been actively investigating them, except they said it in one of those really neat Crocodile Dundee accents. Officials at China's embassy in Canberra were not immediately available for comment because they got to find out what they can say before you know what happens to them. I find the allegations deeply disturbing and troubling, Morrison told reporters in Canberra, adding the government had beefed up Australia's laws and security agencies to counter foreign interference. Wow. Why don't we do that here in America?
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Even more anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Egyptian security forces raided the office of independent news site Mada Masr yesterday, Sunday, and briefly detained 3 of its staff, including its top editor, a day after another of their journalists was detained. Today at 1:30 p.m., they wrote on Twitter, 9 plainclothes security forces entered the Mada Masr office by force. They immediately began confiscating everybody's laptops and phones. When asked who they were, they aggressively refused to answer. After 3 hours, 3 staff members, including Editor-in-Chief Lina Atala, were taken away. The 3 were later released from a local police station, police said. The raid came after security officers had arrested another Mada Masr journalist, editor Shadi Lazalat, at his apartment in the early hours of Saturday in a separate incident, confiscating his and his wife's laptops and some documents, as well as his phone, the website said. It cited Zalat's lawyer as saying late on Sunday that his client had been released. Officials at the Interior Ministry could not be reached. An official at the State Information Service, which liaises with foreign media, referred Reuters to the Supreme Council of Media Regulation, and that council's head and deputy head did not respond. Of course they didn't. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we're going to meet up here tomorrow for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.